Acevedo is part of a talented group of youngsters making noise in the Yankees minor league system. Now I want to turn to Chad Jennings, who at some point in your journalism career, you were a prospect of sorts too. You covered Scranton as a newspaper man before now ascending to cover the Yankees, so you're going to be our go-to guy for the minor leagues. Let's start with Gary Sanchez. Why should Yankee fans be excited about Sanchez?
I think Yankee fans who have followed the minor league system have heard Gary Sanchez's name for a long time. And there were questions. Well, look, you remember Jesus Montero. I mean, power-hitting young catchers have come up through this system, and a lot of them have questions. I mean, these big guys, whether they can stay behind the plate. The reason I think Sanchez is starting to gain a lot of, some more momentum, more buzz, is that he really took steps forward defensively and in terms of maturity. I mean, this guy's really young, and he finally, he got to AAA this year. He got a little bit of time in the big leagues. There's a connection here between the rise of Sanchez and the trade of John Ryan Murphy. I mean, this is a guy who now they feel like could maybe help pretty soon. You mentioned his age. He actually turns 23 this week. You kind of stole my next question. With John Ryan Murphy being traded to the Minnesota Twins, is the backup job Sanchez's to lose? I'm not sure you can call it Sanchez to lose. I think that there's a chance Sanchez could have that. But, look, I mean, he doesn't have that much AAA time. And I think there's probably still some value in sending him back down to the minors, at least for a little while, get some more innings under his belt, get used to catching a little bit more. You don't want a guy to take these sort of strides and then the next season play. I mean, what did Murphy have? 150 at bats this year. That it's kind of tricky to find that balance between, is there still something for him to learn in AAA, or is it now time where he's going to need to learn just by being the understudy to Brian McCann and getting, 1 game, 2 games a week? You talk about learning. What do you think the Yankees learned about him from the Arizona Fall League numbers that he put up? Because he had a really solid Arizona Fall League. He did. And look, the Arizona Fall League is often an offense-heavy league. So you see guys put up big numbers down there. That's not going to mean a whole lot. But I think it just reinforced what you saw. This is a guy who also went down there and they wanted him to catch. They wanted him to get more innings called, that sort of thing. I think it just reinforced what you saw before, and it stretched out his season a little bit more. I mean, this is a catcher. You want him to get kind of used to having to catch so many innings and really get used to the workload it takes to be behind the plate. So I think in that way, that's one thing the Arizona Fall League really solidified with him. Another Yankee prospect who has played in the Arizona Fall League in his career is Aaron Judge. He spent time at both AA and AAA last season, but he found out that ascension to AAA and conquering the pitchers there, it was a little trickier, as those statistics show. Yeah, the first time the kid, look, I'm sure he's been challenged before, but it's the first time that we can see a challenge. It's the first time that the numbers reflect that maybe this pushed him a little bit, and maybe this was a kind of a different approach for him. Look, he came up and he's such a big guy, and you expect this to be just an all-or-nothing power hitter, and he's shown throughout the minors, and he still did a little bit in AAA. He's willing to take walks. He's able to work an at-bat. He's not just a guy going up there swinging and trying to hit a home run. But I do think that the struggles in AAA last year did kind of, it gave you at least a little bit of pause to say, all right, slow down a little bit. This kid, he's moved very quickly. It's okay if he has to go back to the minor leagues coming out of spring training next year. The timing could still work out very well. I mean, the Yankees do have Carlos Beltran still under contract for another year. If that's what this is, if Aaron Judge goes back to AAA, sort of really solidifies himself at that level in the first 3 months of next season and is able to help out late in the year and maybe put himself in a position to take over right field in 2017, that's still a pretty good scenario for the Yankees. Right, that's probably his target date, as much as Yankee fans might not want to hear it. Another full season of AAA is not going to hurt Judge. Well, let's talk about a AAA outfielder who really had an impact last season. And I like stories like this where a guy maybe comes from the outskirts a little bit. Ben Gamel, who was terrific for Scranton last year. Yeah, he was. And you know what? He opened the season as really the 4th outfielder in AAA. I mean, and not only kind of the 4th outfielder in AAA, but just one of so many left-handed hitting outfielders the Yankees have. I mean, it's not only Brett Gardner and Jacoby Ellsbury in the big leagues, but it's Slade Heathcott, it's Mason Williams, it's Ben Gamel, it's Jake Cave. I mean, they have a lot of these guys who are in that kind of, can play all 3 outfield spots, more kind of on-base, focused, speed-oriented than necessarily a pure power hitter. But Gamel was kind of lost in the shuffle for a long time and was just kind of another guy. You'd say, well, they have this guy. Well, they also have Ben Gamel. This year, what he did in AAA, I mean, it was you can make a case that he had the best season of any Yankees minor leaguer in terms of just overall production. And it put him on the radar to the extent that the Yankees put him on the 40-man this year and protected him from the Rule 5, because he now looks like a guy who's ready to be a fourth outfielder anywhere. I mean, he can do a lot of the things that you really prioritize and value in a guy who can give some versatility off the bench.
You know, when you go to spring training, there are guys you want to see. He's now become a guy for me that I want to see on a day-to-day basis if you can. A guy we got a chance to see last year, a left-handed pitcher before he suffered an injury, Jacob Lindgren, but he had the elbow injury, but it's not going to slow him down. Chad, you see this as a guy who could have an impact next season.
Yeah, I think so. I think he's an interesting one in that the Yankees have a long list now of these kind of on-the-verge relievers. I mean, guys who really could step in, and we saw a lot of them this season. I mean, we saw Pinder and Rumbelow and Nick Goody, and right at the end of the year, James Pezos. We could have seen a guy named Johnny Barbato they just put on the 40-man. They have a lot of these guys. Lindgren stands out to me. Just, you know, there's a guy, high draft pick, taken out of college, got to the big leagues less than a year after he was drafted. I mean, that kind of says a lot about what the Yankees think of him when he's healthy, and really what his upside and potential for impact is. I mean, they moved him quickly, and I think if he hadn't had that elbow issue, there's a good chance that we'd already kind of know him and have a better idea of what he could do in the big leagues. I think give him another healthy year where he's right there. I mean, this is the kind of guy who could break camp with the team, make an impact out of spring training, and never look back.